What are the origins of the Scottish people? Are they descended from the Celtic tribes that are indigenous to the land, or the Germanic and French groups that entered Britain during the Middle Ages? And what about the Romans and Vikings? Are the Scottish descended from them too? Finally, how genetically divergent are the Scottish from their English counterparts? Let's find out. Prior to the Anglo-Saxon conquest of Britain, Scotland was mostly dominated by two Celtic tribes. These tribes were the Picts and the Gaels. The Gaels, or the exact same group that most Irish people are descended from, seem to have entered Scotland from Ireland and established themselves as a formidable power towards the end of Roman rule in Britain. The Picts appear to have lived in Scotland for much longer, and dominated most of the land both prior to and during Roman rule. The Romans referred to Scotland as Caledonia, and they used the word Scotti to describe the Gaels. As you can probably discern, this explains the etymological root of the modern name Scotland. The Romans tried several times to conquer Scotland, and failed each time. Thus, there was little to no intermarriage between the Scottish and Romans. The Romans became so fed up with the Scots that they built Hadrian's Wall to keep them out of their stronghold in modern-day England. Rome was eventually driven out of Britain, and Scotland was divided into three kingdoms. Pictland controlled central Scotland and was governed by three Pictish tribes that consolidated into one state. A second kingdom called Dalriata was founded by Gaels from Ireland and encompassed southwestern Scotland and Northern Ireland. A third kingdom was called Northumbria and controlled southeastern Scotland as well as much of northern England. Northumbria was unique amongst the Scottish kingdoms of the time in that it was the only one that was not Celtic. Instead, it was governed by the Anglo-Saxons, a Germanic people that had arrived in Britain a few centuries earlier. The Anglo-Saxons brought with them the English language, an offshoot of the Proto-German dialect spoken at that time in much of continental Europe. There appears to have been significant intermarriage in Scotland between the Anglo-Saxons and native Celtics, although less than there was in England. In the 11th century, the Normans, a group from France, conquered southern Britain, including most of modern-day England. They too intermarried with the Scots, although once again this was to a lesser extent than what happened in England. Now, we need to talk about the Vikings. They raided and conquered large portions of Scotland beginning in the 8th century. There is significant evidence that the Scandinavians and the native Celtic people bore many children together. Indeed, there is a contemporaneous written record of specific terms being used to classify people who were the offsprings of a Celtic parent and a Viking parent. Moreover, modern genetic testing indicates that Scottish people today have up to 16% Viking DNA. The Viking threat seems to have actually unified the various Celtic tribes and caused a nascent Scottish national identity to emerge. The Gaels convinced the Picts to submit to Gaelic rule and merge their territories into the Kingdom of Alba, which would later become the Kingdom of Scotland. And thus, we can see that the Scottish people are the result of several different groups coming together and eventually forming a shared national consciousness that became more cohesive over time. We know from the genetic record that the Scottish are descended from a mixture of Celtic, Viking, Anglo-Saxon, and Norman ancestry. What about the English, though? How different are their origins from the Scottish? Well, the groups that compose English DNA are basically the same, but the weighting of each group is quite different from the Scottish. The English have less Celtic ancestry than the Scots, and significantly more Anglo-Saxon and Norman DNA. This is due to the fact that both groups established a stronger presence in England than they ever did in Scotland. On the other hand, Scottish people have far more Viking ancestry than the English, 4 times more to be precise. This, as you can probably guess, is because the Vikings established a stronger grip over Scotland than England. If you are interested in learning more about the history of Scotland, I included links to some recommended books and movies in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. If you know anyone who is Scottish or is of Scottish descent, go ahead and share this video with them. Thanks for watching.